Invade Earth. The words landed in the galactic conclave like a bomb. Silence followed for a heartbeat, then panic. Ambassador Cythera of the Vreth Dominion had barely finished her statement before the chamber erupted. Not in applause, not in debate, but in sheer alarm. The Vreth Dominion was young by galactic standards, fast, aggressive, and proud. In just 2 centuries, they had absorbed 14 star systems. They knew conquest. They knew strategy. Yet, the simple mention of their next target, Terra 3, had turned the galaxy's most powerful council into a room of trembling delegates. Cythera stood at the central podium of Orenvel, the massive conclave station orbiting a dying red dwarf at the galaxy's edge. Around her, representatives from 7 founding species and 43 associate members stirred in chaos. Translation arrays glowed as 50 alien voices shouted at once. "You cannot be serious," Elder Hawkvorn of the Hawk delegation said, raising all 4 upper limbs in a gesture that meant disbelief. "Withdraw the motion," Oranda's, the tall silver-skinned Solendry, added calmly. "Withdraw it now." "On what grounds?" Cythera's yellow eyes were sharp. She was young for a breath ambassador, barely 90 cycles old, and carried the calm confidence of someone who had never been told no. "Terra 3 is unprotected," she said. "Their species has only just learned interstellar travel. Their fleets are scattered, their technology centuries behind the conclave average. Annexation would be straightforward." The word straightforward ignited more alarm. 2 Devon delegates, silicon-based beings who communicated through vibration, emitted a high-frequency signal the translation arrays rendered as shrill warning. A Hawk Jr. representative quietly left the chamber. The Emerith ambassador, a color-shifting liquid being, turned a deep white. "What is wrong with all of you?" Cythera demanded. Grand Arbiter Dolan Faz, a massive, 4-armed creature with centuries of experience, pressed his hands on the podium. The chamber slowly quieted. His voice carried weight not from volume, but from authority. "Ambassador Cythera," he said, "your motion is not dismissed because of concern for humans. It is dismissed because of concern for you, for your fleet, for your soldiers, for every life you would send and never see again." Cythera blinked. "The planet you call Terra 3, Dolan Faz continued, is known to its inhabitants as Earth. The Conclave has observed it for over 4,000 years. We know it is primitive," Cythera replied. "Yes," Dolan Faz said quietly. "It is dangerous." The chamber went silent. Cythera looked to Orandas. His expression was calm, unreadable. Not pity, not fear. Something closer to the caution you feel standing at the edge of a cliff. "With respect," she said, "I've reviewed all intelligence files. Their population is 9 billion. Their fleets are small. Their weapons are primitive. They are fractured and developing." "Yes," Orandas said, "they're all of that. And yet they survive." Dolan Faz leaned forward. 60,000 years ago, a catastrophic event reduced humanity to fewer than 10,000 individuals. Every model predicted extinction. And yet, they recovered. They rebuilt. They grew. 40,000 years ago, another collapse. 20,000 years ago, another. Each time, humanity bounced back stronger. Cythera opened her mouth, but Orandas continued. "You are looking at their current state and seeing weakness. You are wrong. That state is temporary, a pause between what they were and what they are about to become." Silence hung over the chamber. Then Dolan Faz spoke again, calm and final. "The motion to annex Terra 3 is suspended. Ambassador Cythera, you will visit the Deep Archive tomorrow. You will see everything the Conclave knows about humanity." Cythera said nothing. Around her, the chamber slowly resumed normal activity, but she remained staring at the projection of the small blue and green planet floating in space. The Conclave was afraid of this world, and she did not yet understand why. The Deep Archive was not welcoming. 3 levels below the main Conclave chambers, its reinforced doors had not opened for ordinary business in over a century. The corridor was narrow and dim, lit by amber strips that made everything look older than it was. The air was cool and dry, carrying a faint metallic tang. Cythera walked with 2 members of her delegation, General Oren, her broad-shouldered military advisor with 30 years of campaigns behind him, and Analyst Deva, a young specialist who had quietly taken notes since arriving. They followed Orandas, the Solandry, whose long silver fingers traced the walls as though guiding them. He said nothing. He simply led. The doors to the archive opened slowly, heavy with centuries of disuse. Inside, the room was surprisingly small, circular, and lined with data cores that predated most modern technology. At the center was a single wide table, flat and dark. Its surface glowed softly with a blue light as if awakening from a long sleep. Everything you are about to see, Orandas said, is drawn from 40,000 years of direct observation. Hidden probes, long-range listening stations, records the Conclave has quietly collected. We have watched Earth for a very long time. Sethera leaned forward as the first images appeared, a human child cradling a four-legged predator. The animal's eyes were half closed. It purred softly. "What is that?" General Oren asked. "That," Orandas said, "is a dog, descended from one of Earth's apex predators. Humans domesticated it, not to eat it, not to use it, but as a companion." The table filled with more images: cats, horses, birds of prey, even large constrictors kept in homes. Humans had tamed predators for companionship, carefully and deliberately. Analyst Deva frowned, unprepared for the subtle brilliance in such behavior. Orandas moved on. A timeline appeared, mapping catastrophic population collapses against human recovery. 70,000 years ago, a single event reduced humanity to fewer than 10,000. Conventional wisdom predicted extinction, but humanity endured. 40,000 years ago, another collapse. 20,000 years ago, another. Each time, they returned stronger, Sethera swallowed. She had studied population models for years. She knew what extinction curves looked like. Humanity's resilience defied all expectation. Orandas brought up technical files, weapons, energy systems, delivery mechanisms. Humans had developed the capacity to destroy entire cities within decades of understanding atomic science, and repeatedly chose not to use it. At critical moments, single individuals had prevented catastrophic outcomes by defying protocol, trusting instinct over procedure. Primitive? Sethera whispered. "No," Orandas said. "They're deciding what they want to be, and they refuse to stop." The next files contained behavioral studies, psychological profiles, and historical case studies. Humans repeatedly acted against their own immediate interest, not recklessly, but deliberately. They resisted orders when the alternative was unacceptable. They continued efforts in the face of overwhelming odds. Sethera realized she was staring at a species that did not recognize limits. Not at the individual level, not at the community level, at a civilizational level. Their capacity for resistance increased under pressure. Oren, usually stoic, said nothing. His 30 years of military planning could not have prepared him for this. Orandas paused. Imagine these people receiving news that a foreign power has arrived at their doorstep, declaring their home taken. What do you think happens next? Sethera stared at the glowing table. She understood the answer, even if she wasn't ready to admit it. Humanity would fight. They would resist. And they would endure. The chamber outside the deep archive could wait. In this quiet room, surrounded by millennia of observation, she finally understood why the Conclave feared Earth, and why her own people had underestimated it. The KR-7 settlement was tiny. For 1,000 humans, far from home, mining minerals and growing crops on a distant moon. By every standard, they were an easy target. No military presence, no warships in orbit, no real defenses. By every measure, they were vulnerable. Yet, when 17 ships of the KE Collective arrived at 0300 local time, the humans resisted. Not with advanced weapons. They had none, but with determination, intelligence, and sheer creativity. The first ground team landed at 0317. Within minutes, humans armed with drills, excavation charges, and maintenance tools turned the settlement into a trap. A single engineer, Carl Gideon, rewired the colony's power systems through the grain storage network to generate an electromagnetic pulse. One man, using improvised tools, disabled the alien ground team's equipment. By hour 3, the aliens had lost 2 landing crafts. By hour 6, 2 orbital vessels were disabled. By hour 9, the settlement remained active. Losses were real but contained, and the human resistance grew stronger with each strike. Orandas, recounting the events in the Deep Archive, said calmly, "We modeled their behavior using data from 47 species. Every other species gave way under increasing pressure. Humans, they became more dangerous. The humans did not fight because they were ordered to. They fought because they chose to protect what mattered to them. They improvised. They adapted. They resisted. And when the aliens predicted compliance, humanity shattered their expectations." Sethera leaned forward, absorbing the files. 38% of the alien fleet was disabled. The settlement was still functional. One engineer had single-handedly caused devastation far beyond what any model predicted, simply by understanding his environment and improvising. "Are they trained soldiers?" General Oren asked. "No," Orandus said. "They are people protecting something they value. That is not equivalent to soldiers following orders. That cannot be modeled. That cannot be predicted. That cannot be defeated by force alone." The KE collective withdrew after 11 hours. Not because humans had reinforcements or superior technology. They had none. They withdrew because their own systems calculated that continuing would cost more than any benefit could justify. Humans had created a new kind of battlefield, one where calculation failed. Sethera and her team sat in stunned silence. 4,000 miners, 1 engineer, a community that refused to be moved, and 9 billion more humans waiting across a small blue planet. The implications were staggering. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was unpredictable, resilient, and clever beyond reason. Orandus concluded. That operation was reviewed in full. The collective has not returned to human space. KR-7 proved that humans are categorically unsuitable targets for rational military action. Sethera's eyes met General Oren's. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. The lesson was clear. Humanity could not be underestimated. And this was only the beginning. The Conclave did not take the decision lightly. Humanity had proven themselves at KR-7. 4,000 settlers had resisted an entire fleet with nothing but ingenuity and courage. The lesson was undeniable. Humans could not be approached as a typical species. Grand Arbiter Dolanfaz called an emergency session. The council chambers were quieter than usual, but the tension was palpable. The fastest vote in recorded conclave history followed. 47 in favor, 2 abstentions, 0 against. The decision. The first formal contact with humanity would proceed immediately, carefully, and with respect. The task of assembling a diplomatic delegation fell to the Solandri Finavra, a mid-career diplomat known for remaining calm under pressure. Volunteers were called from across the galaxy. The response was underwhelming. Out of dozens of potential candidates, only 12 stepped forward. Younger diplomats, some inexperienced, some curious, all ready for the most important mission in galactic history. 3 weeks later, the delegation was ready. 7 species were represented. Each member had studied the deep archive files, reviewed every historical record, and understood the stakes. Finavra herself had spent hours with Orandas, learning one critical lesson above all: be honest with humanity. They respond poorly to manipulation, but well to respect. The delegation traveled to the Outer Rim, positioning themselves near an automated human deep space relay station. The station was simple, efficient, and far more advanced than expected for a civilization at this developmental stage. Finavra gave the order to open a channel. 6 minutes passed while the translation system synchronized. Then came static. Then a human voice, brisk and distracted. "This is Relay Station Delta 7. You're transmitting on a restricted frequency. Identify yourself." Finavra delivered the prepared greeting, carefully paced and precise. There was a pause. Then the voice. "So, you're saying there are 50 alien civilizations out there, and you all knew about us this whole time?" "Not quite a question," Finavra replied. "Give me 20 minutes," the voice said. "I need to call my supervisor." The delegation remained silent. 20 minutes stretched like hours. Then the voice returned. Hi, sorry for the wait. Lieutenant Nina Halcott, Outer Relay Network. I've been told to keep this channel open while we gather the right people. Hello, welcome, I suppose. How long have you been out there? What followed was 4 hours and 12 minutes of conversation. The most unusual first contact transcript in the Conclave's history. Nina Halcott was not a diplomat. She was a communications specialist, approaching the situation with direct questions and careful listening. She asked about the Conclave, their governance, interstellar travel, and even mundane concerns like sleep schedules and shift rotations. She wanted to understand the aliens, not be impressed by them. By the end of the session, a secure link was established with Earth's Central Command. A human response team was formed within 48 hours. Diplomats, translators, scientists, and observers from multiple governments. The Conclave noted the meticulous coordination, which produced an extraordinary volume of documentation. Sethura and General Oren reviewed the records. They understood immediately. Humans were different. They were organized, deliberate, and meticulous. And yet, they were unpredictable, fiercely independent, and entirely self-reliant. The first contact had succeeded, but the lesson was clear. Humanity would not be controlled, cajoled, or underestimated. They would be respected or ignored at the Conclave's peril. Earth's official response took time. 2 years, 3 months, and 11 days. In galactic terms, remarkably fast. In human terms, it was a reflection of careful deliberation. Every national government, academic institution, and public forum had weighed in. Every voice had contributed to a decision that would shape humanity's place in the galaxy. The Conclave prepared for Earth's membership ceremony. Diana Frell, a senior diplomat with 4 decades of international experience, arrived aboard a modest human vessel. She walked into the main chamber of Orenvel with quiet confidence, extending a hand in greeting to Finavra. We have a few conditions, she said plainly. Nothing unreasonable, but we'd like to go through them properly. From her satchel came a 47-page document. The Conclave read it carefully. Every amendment was precise, internally consistent, and thoughtful. The first addressed pre-contact civilizations. Observation must include independent ethical review, and formal contact must occur once developmental thresholds were reached. The second revised collective defense, ensuring that aggression against one member would trigger a unified response. The third proposed a cultural exchange bureau designed to facilitate the sharing of science, art, food, and knowledge between species. Even cross-species dietary logistics were considered. The vote was unanimous. Humanity had joined the Conclave, not as timid newcomers, but as equals with clear expectations, ethical rigor, and intellectual curiosity. During the ceremony, Finavra observed the human delegation. Unlike most newcomers, they did not stand awkwardly, unsure of protocol. They moved confidently, analyzed, discussed, and adapted. Felix Crane and a Hawk Jr. diplomat argued, disagreed, and reached consensus, all under the eyes of 51 civilizations. And they did so as if it were perfectly natural. Sethura, watching from the gallery, finally understood. Humanity had arrived not just as a species to be observed, but as active participants shaping the future of interstellar diplomacy. They had survived catastrophe, resisted conquest, and now, through careful reasoning and ingenuity, carved their place among the stars. Orandas, the Solandry, said quietly beside her, "We were ready to conquer them. Fleet in position, operations planned. We thought it would take 3 weeks." "And it did not," Sethura replied. "No," Orandas said. "It took a species that refused to be predicted." That is precisely the point. Below them, the conclave chamber buzzed with life. 51 civilizations, 51 different languages, histories, and ways of existing in the universe. Yet, among them, the newest members, the humans, were the loudest, most vibrant, and most alive. Sethura watched them and smiled faintly. She knew the galaxy had changed, not because humans had arrived, but because humans had arrived fully prepared to shape it themselves. And that, she realized, was a story no one would forget.